Before we begin, I'd like to tell you that I will be making an important announcement at the end of this video, so make sure to stay tuned until the very end if you want to stay informed about what's going on. And now, back to your regularly scheduled video. Hi, hello and welcome back to F1 Challenge VB. My name is Mephisto, and our journey through the history of Formula 1 continues today with the 11th and final round of the 1967 season, the Mexican Grand Prix. It was held on the 22nd of October, it had 19 entries. All of them took part in the race with 7 ending up retiring. The race consisted of 65 laps completed in 1 hour, 59 minutes and 28 seconds. Clark started the race from pole. Eamon was second on the grid but retired on lap 53 when he ran out of fuel. Dan Gurney started the race from third but retired on lap 5 with a failed radiator. Graham Hill was fourth on the grid and retired on lap 19 after his half shaft broke. Brabham started from 5th and Denny Hulme started from 6th. Jim Clark drove a superb race to win the Mexican Grand Prix from Jack Brabham, who climbed up from 5th to 2nd. He was 1 minute 25.36 seconds behind Clark. Denny Hulme climbed from 6th to 3rd and was 1 lap down. Surtees went from 7th to 4th, he was also 1 lap down. Mike Spence started the race from 11th but ended up in 5th, he was 2 laps down. And Rodriguez, who started the race from 13th, rounded off the top 6 and he was 2 laps down as well. Here we are at the fantastic Hermanos Rodriguez circuit, where a lap starts off with a very long run down into turn 1, a fast open right-hander. This is followed immediately by turns 2 and 3, forming a tight right-left chicane. Turns 4 and 5 are next, they form a medium speed left-right chicane. Be careful however, as the right-hander is significantly tighter than the left-hander. A quick burst of power and we arrive into turn 6, a very tight, cambered 180-degree right-hand hairpin. Be sure not to use too much power on corner exit. Turns 7 and 8 are next, and they form a medium-speed left-right chicane. Next is turn 9, which leads into a long series of S-turns, which end with turn 13. Lastly, we come into turn 14, a long, cambered 180-degree corner that brings us around onto the main straight, and that is a lap around the Hermanos Rodriguez circuit. And here we are in qualifying, coming around into the hairpin. I just started my flying lap where however, as I came into the hairpin, I started braking very late, which because I braked late, I plowed straight into the Armco there, lost my destroyed my front suspension, and that was it for qualifying, unfortunately. As we take a look at the previous Mexican Grand Prix winners, we haven't won a race here yet, but there's still time. I'm sure we can do it at some point. Maybe today, maybe not. Anyway, Denny Hulme is in pole with Clark 2nd, Graham Hill 3rd, 4th, Jackie Stewart 5th is Moses Solana, followed by Chris Eamon rounding off the top 6. Then in 7th we have Jack Brabham, followed by Mike Spence in 8th. In 9th we have Jonathan Williams, followed by Dan Gurney in 10th. In 11th we have Bruce McLaren, followed by Guy Ligier in 12th. 13th is Pierce Courage. David Hobbs is 14th. 15th Jochen Rindt. 30th 16th. 17th Chris Irwin. 18th Joe Siffert. Pedro Rodriguez 19th. Jackie X is 20th. In 21st we have John Love, followed by Mike Parks in 22nd. In 23rd we have Ludovico Scarfiotti. Joe Bonnier is 24th. 25th is Jean-Pierre Beltois. In 26th we have Bob Anderson, although he's not really here obviously. 27th is Dave Charlton. 28th Mike Fisher. 29th Lucky Botha. Johnny Servos Gavin 30th. 31st is Sam Tingle, and Andy Higgs is bringing up the rear in 32nd. So that is the lineup for today's race. Hopefully we'll do well, although given our starting position I'm not too hopeful, but hey, we had worst things happen to us, so maybe today the gods of Formula 1 will be merciful and allow us to do well. Anyway, I had a pretty decent start, I would say, and we even managed to gain a couple of positions as we raced towards turn 1. I tried to get around Charlton here, but he blocked me, so I had no other choice than to hold back and hope that I could overtake him through the corner, as one of the French cars manages to get around us on the outside. That's not very good as we come through the chicane, and people are slowly pulling away from us. That's really not a good sign. And here is a replay of the start. Again, kind of a decent start, but something a little bit better would have probably been even more appealing, but well, that didn't happen. Again, I tried to get around Dave Charlton, but he kind of blocked me there, so I had no way of getting around him. Well, I could have went off the circuit, but that would have been an illegal overtake, so didn't want to take that risk. Anyway, coming into turn 1 here, everyone who was behind me managed to cut the track, so now I am down in 32nd, which isn't very good, especially since everyone is pulling away. Later on, so on the opening lap, as my frames dropped completely due to the crashes there were quite a few people on the track. Quite a few people actually retired. And here we have some replays. First off, we have John Love coming around to lose his car flips coming out of the right-hander, and someone crashes into him, completely destroys his car, and he's out of the race. And here is Sam Tingle coming around. He flips his car, and he is also out of the Mexican Grand Prix, and those accidents actually caused the frame rate to drop. Anyway, because of that, I managed to overtake Lucky Bossa. However, as we came into the hairpin, he managed to overtake me by cutting the track, and well, that's that. And here is a replay of Jackie Stewart coming around to set a new track record, 135 point something. That's actually 12 seconds faster than the previous fastest lap, which is quite insane. That's very, very fast. I have no idea how he managed to go 12 seconds faster, but he somehow did. Anyway, we now move on to lap 5 as Jackie Stewart catches up to us and laps us. So lap 5 and we're already behind the leaders by 1 lap. That's not very good. As we now move on to lap 6, I try to move out of the way. However, that doesn't really work into our favor, because at some point I managed to overtake Dave Charlton. However, he was kind of buried between the faster cars, and well, I had to pull to the side to let everyone through, and so did Dave Charlton, so we fall to the side as we see Beltois there coming into the pits to retire due to a gearbox problem. Lap 7 now, and Mike Spence has retired, so we move up 1 position into 27th, although that's not very reassuring as more and more cars go past us. And here's a replay of Mike Spence. He pulls to the side, his car flips, and well, that's the end of his race as Bruce McLaren kind of crashes into the rear of Spence's car, and that's, well, his race was ended anyway, but that helped it even further. Anyway, we now move on to lap 8, and Bruce McLaren is now out of the race as well, so we should move up one more position as we take a look at a replay of Bruce McLaren. I mean, you know, there's smoke coming out of his engine, so not much he could have done about that, I don't think. As we now move on to lap 9, and now Pedro Rodriguez is also out of the race, so that's good for us. At least we are moving up the field. However, it's mainly due to, well, it's not mainly, it is due to retirements. As we take a look at a replay of Pedro Rodriguez, apparently his suspension has some failure. He stops his car in the middle of the road, and that is the end of his race, as even more cars continue to lap me on lap 10 here. And Stifford is now out of the race as well. And here is a replay. Apparently he has some problems with his gearbox, although I have no idea how that ended up in him flipping his car upside down and killing a few people. Anyway, we now move on to lap 12, coming through the hairpin as Jack Brabham retires from the race as well. So retirements keep adding as we take a look at a replay of Jack Brabham. He comes through this left-hander, he flips his car upside down, and well, that's the end of his race. Lap 13 now, and Jackie Stewart is out of the race as well. So that's one more free position for us, and here is a replay of Jackie Stewart. He has smoke coming out of his engine. He pulls to the side and he's out of the race and out of the lead of the race as well. So kind of bad for him, I guess. Good for us because that means an extra position for us, and we are now on lap 15 as Jim Clark also retires. Here is a replay of Jim Clark. He also has developed some engine problem and he keeps spinning. I would say that he's actually faster like this. I have no idea what happened there, but anyway, he's out of the race as well. And he was in the lead at that point, so too bad for him as well. Lap 15 now, and Lucky Bossa also retired, so even more free positions for us. And here is a replay of Lucky Bossa. Apparently he had some problems with his brakes, so that's why he ended up crashing and retiring from the race. Lap 17 now, and Dave Charlton is also out of the Mexican Grand Prix, and here is a replay of Charlton coming around the S's. He flips his car coming out of that left-hander, crashes into the Arco, loses his front left, and he's out of the Mexican Grand Prix as well. We now move on to lap 19, and Pierce Carriage is now out of the race. At this point I was actually lapped by everyone, and here is a replay of Pierce Carriage coming through this left-hander. His car flips upside down, and that's the end of his race as well. And to be honest, I expected most people to flip and or retire through turn 1. Anyway, we are now on lap 19, and still on lap 19 as Graham Hill crosses the line to win the Mexican Grand Prix. And here's a replay of Graham Hill coming around to cross the line and win the Mexican Grand Prix. To be honest, if Jim Clark and Jackie Stewart wouldn't have retired, I probably would have been farther down even more, but even so I didn't do too well because I was unable to complete 90% of race distance. As we take a look at the race results, Hill wins, Holmes third, anyway, I kind of missed that. Anyway, here are the final three people who managed to finish the race, and here are the retirements. Once again, I was 3 laps down, which means I was outside of the 90% race distance. And again, if Clark and Surtees especially would have still been in the race, by the end I probably would have been like 7 laps behind. But yeah, that was the Mexican Grand Prix, so let's move on. And here are the career statistics. This was Andy's 161st Grand Prix. His best start is from first, has 16 pole positions, has set 29 fastest laps. His best finishes in first, has completed 100 races, 77 of them in the points, has won 44 Grand Prix, 4 at the Indianapolis 500, 6 in Monaco, has 8 championships under his belt, has scored a total of 521 points, has retired 61 times, has experienced 3,373 out of 4,212 laps, has 8 bronze trophies, 16 silver trophies, 44 gold trophies, and as an extension 44 podiums. And here is one final look at the championship standings. Graham Hill wins the 1967 Drivers' Championship, Brabham second, Irwin is third, Jackie Stewart and Mike Spence fourth, Chris Amon sixth. We finished the season in 18th, unfortunately. The last person with points is Joe Bonnier down in 26th, and bringing up the bottom of the driver standings is Giancarlo Baghetti. So those are the driver standings. Congratulations to Graham Hill. He did a fantastic job to win the championship despite all odds, despite of quite a few retirements actually on his part, although not as much as anyone else, and he did do fairly well. He won 2 races and scored a couple of second places, so that was what helped him win the championship. Anyway, let's move on to the constructors now, where we have Team Lotus winning the constructors championship, Owen Racing and Brabham sharing second, fourth are Scuderia Ferrari, Cooper and Rec Parnell sharing 5th. The last team with points are Joe Bonnier Racing Team in 14th, and bringing up the bottom of the Constructors Championship are Charles Vogel down in 23rd. So those are the 2 championships. Congratulations to Graham Hill, congratulations to Team Lotus. They've did a fantastic job in 1967, so yeah, what else there is to say? Except congratulations. Too bad Andy and Cooper didn't have as much success, but hey, you have seasons like this, I guess, every once in a while. But anyway, that is the end of the Mexican Grand Prix, and looking back at it, I have no idea how the AI was so fast all of a sudden. I mean, this time they were fast even on the straights, which up until now in the season, it looked like they were only fast through corners, but yeah, somehow they picked up the pace. And again, Jackie Stewart's track record is actually insane, considering, again, 12 seconds faster than the previous, more than 12 seconds faster than the previous track record. That's actually insane. I have no idea how that happened, but hey, yeah, let's just move on. And before we end the video, let's take a look at the team and driver changes for the 1968 season, and we'll start as usual with Ferrari. The only driver staying with Ferrari for the 1968 season is Chris Amon. Mike Parks will be retiring, and of course, Lorenzo Bandini is no longer among us. Amon will be joined by former Cooper driver Jackie Ickx and either newcomer Derek Bell or 8-time world champion Andy Higgs. Cooper will be having a completely new lineup for 1968 with returning Belgian Lucien Bianchi, rookies Brian Redman and Vic Alford, and Ludovico Scarfiotti. Owen Racing are also having a new lineup with former Cooper driver Rodriguez, returning Richard Atwood, and newcomer Bobby Unster. Lotus will be divided up into two teams, with the main team having Clark and Hill as their drivers. Solana will be taking leave from Formula 1, whilst the secondary team, Gold Leaf Team Lotus, will have rookie Jackie Oliver at the wheel. Over at Brabham, things will stay relatively the same, with Brabham himself continuing to drive for the team. His former teammate Holm will be joining New Zealander McLaren, whilst Brabham has signed up Austrian Jochen Rindt as his second driver. Rick Parnell will only have Pierce Courage at the wheel, whilst Chris Irwin will be retiring from racing. Over at Rob Walker's team, the situation will be unchanged. He will still have Siffert as his driver. With the loss of Bob Anderson, DW Racing will not be returning next season. John Surtees will continue to drive for Honda in 1968 and will be joined by David Hobbs, since Bernard White decided to pull out from F1. Bruce McLaren will continue to race in 1968, and as stated earlier, he will be joined by fellow countryman Denny Holm. Joe Bonnier and his team will be returning for another season in Formula 1. Mike Fisher and Sam Tingle will be missing from the grid in 1968, and so will their teams. Scuderia Scribante along with their driver Dave Charlton will be joining us for another year in Formula 1. John Love will be joining the newly formed Team Gunston. Guy Ligier will be missing from the grid in 1968. Matra, like Lotus, have split into two teams, with Matra Sports having Jean-Pierre Beltois and newcomer Henry Pescarolo as their drivers, and Matra International having Johnny Servoz-Gavin and Jackie Stewart. We have a few new teams joining us in 1968 as well. Among them are Caltex Racing Team, with Kurt Ahrens at the wheel. BMW have also decided to form a team. Their driver will be either Hubert Hanna or 8-time world champion Andy Higgs, and Charles Vogel will be joining us for their first full season, with Silvio Moser at the wheel. So those are the team and driver changes for the 1968 season. I'm really looking forward to it. But with that, we say farewell to the 1967 F1 season, and we also say farewell to an era in Formula 1. 1968 will bring forth some major changes that will shape the future of the sport. Without the changes that took place in Formula 1 in 1968, this amazing sport we all know and love would either look and feel completely different or would no longer exist altogether. Some even argued back then that these changes would be the thing that would ruin the sport, but the fact that we still have Formula 1 today, I guess, is a testament to how wrong they were. Of course, we can only speculate how the sport would have looked today if these changes wouldn't have taken place. And to some extent, I personally feel that these changes would have been implemented sooner or later. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, I will cover the specifics of these changes in more detail at the opening round of the 1968 season. Now, however, I have something else I want to talk about. Even before I started this series, I was making plans on how I wanted to make it, and in my original plan I wanted to change the driver I was playing as every few seasons, about every 10 to 15 seasons. Then, when I actually started the series, A little over a year ago, I decided that I would use Andy Higgs throughout the entire series. However, very soon people started suggesting that I should change him up every now and then. And after some thinking, I decided that that would be the best thing to do. But I still had to figure out how I wanted all this to play out. Through a combination of my own ideas and consulting your suggestions, I have decided to go with the plan I am about to share with you guys. So I decided that I would create a family of Formula 1 drivers, and each of these drivers would race for 20 seasons. This was Andy's 18th season, which means his time in Formula 1 is slowly coming to an end. As soon as we hit 1970, his son will take over. Then in 1990, his grandson. In 2020, his great-grandson, and so on. Some of you already knew this since I've been talking about it in the comments, and kept nagging me about what Andy's son's name is. And the truth is, I don't have a name for him. I never planned to give him a name myself, because I wanted to allow you guys to name Andy's son. So let's just say that both Andy and his wife are absolutely horrible parents and have never named their child. For 18 years he was simply known as Higgs Jr. or Higgs' son, which is kind of cruel, and I guess child protection wouldn't really allow this, but hey, this is a fictional universe, so I don't know, child abuse isn't such a big thing. Anyway, it is going to be your job to name Andy's son, but first I want to set some ground rules. 1. Since Andy is British, I will only accept English names, or rather names that you'd commonly find in English-speaking countries. Don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against any country or language. I just feel that it would be highly unlikely that Andy's son would be named something other than an English-sounding name. But if you disagree, I am willing to change this rule. 2. I will only accept proper names. That means no nicknames, no random words, and most definitely no profanities. So things like jackass, dingleberry, etc. are out of the question. Only proper names, please. Mike, Jackson, you get the point. Proper names. 3. I will only accept one name per user. So if you suggest a name, you can no longer suggest any other one, and if you do so, that will be invalidated. 4. And this is the last rule. When suggesting a name, I want you to specify that in the comments by typing name suggestion at the beginning of the comment, and then typing the name in the following format. Name Higgs. So for example, Jonathan Higgs. But please keep in mind to put name suggestion at the beginning of the comment, otherwise it won't count. At the end of the 1968 season, I will gather all the names you guys have suggested and put them in a straw poll. So for the duration of the 1969 season, you will have to vote for the team you'd like to see Andy's son drive for, as well as vote for Andy's son's name. So to recap, only suggest English names, or at the very least, names you'd commonly find in English-speaking countries. As much as I would like to drive as a guy named Satoshi Higgs, it's not going to happen. Not in this series anyway. 2. Only suggest actual names, no nicknames, no random words, and definitely no curse words. I don't think I have to explain this one. 3. I will only accept one name per person, and this is to give everyone a fair chance. And lastly, make sure to type name suggestion at the beginning of the comment. This is going to make it easier for me to find comments containing suggestions much easier. Anyway, that is it for this video because it is turning out to be quite long. So as soon as this video goes live, you'll have a few more hours to vote for next season's team. So if you haven't done so yet and want to have a say in where Andy ends up in 1968, make sure to follow the link in the description. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, stay sharp. Now back to your regularly and now back to your regularly and now back to your regularly and now back to the regularly scheduled and now back to your regularly Why is this so freaking hard? And now back to your regularly... I almost did it. And now back to your regularly... Oh. And now back to your... Why is this so freaking hard? And now back to your regularly scheduled video.